In the cold autumn of 1328, beneath the vaulted ceilings of the French court, a scandal was quietly fermenting, one so profound that it would ripple across generations, alter the balance of European power, and ignite a century of brutal warfare. As the bells of Notre Dame tolled for a new monarch's coronation, behind the gilded latticework of royal chambers, a far darker story was taking shape. History remembers the 100 Years' War as a grand clash between kingdoms, but few recall the affair that helped light its fuse, a forbidden love hidden behind embroidered veils and heavy velvet drapes between a queen and her knight, and the king who dared to silence them. This is not merely a tale of armies and banners. This is a tale of secrets whispered through palace walls, of betrayed bloodlines, and of how lust and treason conspired to fracture Europe for over a century. At the heart of the drama stood the French royal family, Cape Tian blood, ancient and proud, with a lineage stretching back centuries. In the early 14th century, Philip IV of France, known to history as Philip the Fair, ruled with an iron will. Tall, severe, and famously ruthless, he sought to solidify his power not only through diplomacy and battle, but through carefully calculated marriages for his children. Philip's 3 sons, Louis, Philip, and Charles, were all positioned to inherit the crown in succession, but it was his daughter, Isabella, the so-called she-wolf of France, who would prove to be the silent architect of disaster. Married to Edward II of England in an alliance of crowns, Isabella found herself trapped in a cold and loveless court, her affection spurned in favor of her husband's male favorites. It was through Isabella that scandal would one day erupt, but not in the way history might have expected. The chain of destruction began with the Tour de Nesle affair, a name that still echoes in the annals of French disgrace. It was in 1314, just months before the death of Philip IV, when rumors first reached Isabella in England. During a visit to her homeland, she presented her father with a peculiar gift, a set of elaborately embroidered purses for her brother's wives. What followed was a courtly gesture laced with suspicion. The Queen of England had noticed something peculiar. Certain items of hers had made their way into the hands of 2 knights in France, the Diony brothers, Walter and Philip. These men, handsome, bold, and well-liked within the royal circle, were often seen at court. Yet their presence, it seemed, extended into more forbidden spaces, into the bedchambers of royal daughters-in-law. With Isabella's warning, Philip IV launched an investigation, conducted not through open inquiry, but through whispered interrogations and spies. Soon, the charges were revealed. Marguerite of Burgundy, wife to Louis, and Blanche of Burgundy, married to Charles, were accused of adultery with the Diony brothers. The 3rd daughter-in-law, Jean, wife of Philip, was implicated only in knowing about the trysts and failing to report them. The betrayal cut deeper than personal disgrace. In a dynasty where royal bloodlines were sacred, where queens bore the future of kingdoms, such a transgression was treason, not merely a crime of passion, but a threat to the very legitimacy of France's heirs. The scandal exploded within the halls of the Louvre and beyond. The Diony brothers were arrested, tortured, and eventually executed in the cruelest fashion. Their bodies were flayed, broken, and displayed as a warning to others. The royal daughters-in-law were imprisoned, their titles stripped, and their reputations forever blackened. But the damage was already done. Marguerite, whose husband Louis became king shortly after the scandal, was never crowned queen. She died in prison under suspicious circumstances. Some say strangled by order of her husband. Blanche remained in confinement for the rest of her days. Jean, spared by her husband's intervention, was eventually restored to court, though forever marked. And yet, beneath this storm of disgrace, another consequence was taking root. One not immediately visible, but destined to change history, with doubt cast upon the legitimacy of the royal heirs. With bloodlines questioned and alliances frayed, the succession of the French crown was thrown into disarray. In 1328, the direct male line of the Capetians came to an end with the death of Charles IV. None of the sons of Philip IV left behind a surviving male heir. The question of succession loomed like a thundercloud. Two contenders emerged, each with a claim rooted in royal blood, and each shadowed by the ghost of betrayal. One was Philip of Valois, cousin to the late king, who claimed the throne through the male line. The other was a more distant but dangerous figure, Edward III of England, the son of Isabella, daughter of Philip IV. Through his mother, Edward laid claim to the crown of France. But the French lords invoked the Salic law, a centuries-old Frankish code that barred succession to the female line. Isabella's claim, and thus Edward's, was dismissed. Philip of Valois was crowned King Philip VI. Edward's fury burned silently for years. Humiliated and denied, he bided his time, gathering strength. And when the opportunity came, when political tensions flared and diplomatic insults piled up, Edward declared war. The year was 1337. The conflict that began as a dynastic feud over legitimacy exploded into the 100 Years' War. But behind the banners and sieges, behind Agincourt and Crécy, and the endless battles for Calais and Bordeaux, still lingered the bitter aftertaste of scandal. The Tour de Nesle affair had done more than shame a royal house. It had unraveled the trust that bound dynasties. It had poisoned marriages, cast doubt upon heirs, and ultimately fractured Europe's greatest kingdoms. Isabella, whose suspicions had triggered the chain of events, lived long enough to see the war ignite. In her later years, cloistered in the quietude of Castle Rising, she reflected not only on her estranged husband's downfall, a fate she helped orchestrate, but on the war her warning had helped awaken. She had unmasked betrayal, only to watch it consume empires. The shadow of that secret affair would stretch for more than a century. Kings would die. Princes would be born in exile. Cities would fall. And as the war raged across fields and fortresses, one truth remained unspoken but never forgotten. That royal lust, hidden behind silken curtains, had set the world ablaze. For a war to last 100 years, it must begin with more than ambition. It must begin with a wound. The Tour de Nesle affair was that wound, a slow, festering poison that bled through thrones and crowns, through treaties and coronations. And at its heart lay a queen's betrayal, a knight's desire, and a kingdom's disgrace. As the 14th century waned and new monarchs rose, the echoes of that scandal never fully died. Chroniclers, even those bound by the fear of royal reprisal, recorded the tale in hushed ink. Letters discovered centuries later bore witness to the sorrow of imprisoned queens and the fury of kings betrayed. France would never forget. England would never forgive. The road to war was paved not only with armies, but with lies, whispers, and forbidden kisses in the dark. And the cost would be counted in generations.